It is common belief that when publishing changes, so does society. However, this is not always the case. Over the past 2,000 years, there's been a major shift from printed publication of newspapers to online publication of newspapers, a major shift that appears to change our engagement with news media. But apart from the way we read the news, is it really a societal shift? In order to discuss this topic, let's look at newspapers, both printed and online, and see how this has changed their process of distribution, as well as their way of making money. We will discuss advertising and how advertising has changed the money-making schemes of major newspaper companies today. Then we can see whether changing publications really do change society, or whether changing methods of publication just change our definition of society. Advertising comes in many different forms within newspapers, from the ads companies place to promote products to the ads placed by readers. All of these ads cost money, depending on where in the paper it is and how big. Advertising has been around for years, from the signs outside of shops, town criers in the street, and now our ads online. The advertising industry is changing with the newspaper industry, and this is because they go hand in hand. How the newspaper publication affects advertising industry, however, is another story. But first, let's look at printed newspapers. Printed publications have been around since the 16th century. Newspapers started out as handwritten and then were eventually printed and sent around the town in order to spread the news. A printed paper has always been a reliable way to catch up on the events happening around town, through both articles and advertisements placed within its paper pages. For printed papers to continue printing, they are required to make money, and this is achieved through advertising. Advertising within newspapers has been around since the 1800s. An example of a product which is advertised in newspapers since the 17th century is Campbell's Soup, who tended to advertise readily since their inception in 1869. People have always engaged with printed newspapers as a society, as we value the ability to find out about current affairs. However, this is also true with the online. Now let's look at the movement of newspapers online. Since the inception of the internet, a change has begun in how we engage with different forms of media. Online news sites have realised one thing, that to survive online, newspapers are seeking a worldwide audience. This is a major positive for news dispersion. However, by moving online, newspapers have lost revenue from paper sales and rely heavily on advertising. The major problem with advertising online is that it's a worldwide market, and finding a global advertising company is hard to come by. Online news sites are charging so much as $260 a day for a banner across a page in order to make up for the loss of paper sales. Another way they are making up for this is to ask for subscriptions, implementing paywalls onto their sites. These paywalls ask you to pay an amount for accessing the news site for a period of time. For example, if someone were to read more than 30 articles on the Sydney Morning Herald website, you would be asked to subscribe for $15 a month. That's 50 cents a day per person that would traditionally be reading their printed paper. It's not as much as the $1.30 per paper that they were selling before, but it is adding up. Our contemporary society relies on the news just as much as we did 2,000 years ago, maybe even more. So why is it a common belief that this change is affecting society's involvement? It is true that contemporary society relies pretty heavily on news media, and this reliance has not changed with the motion online. Society still looks to newspapers such as Sydney Morning Herald and the New York Times for their daily dose of information about the world. However, it is easier for somebody to do this. Because of the immediacy of the internet, it is easy to find out about worldwide events as it is just one click away. The act of reading the news has not lost its popularity. Society's reliance on our current events has not changed. What has changed, however, is the way newspapers make money. Printed papers rely on sales and advertising for money, while online news sites rely on subscriptions and advertising. The differences between the printed and the online are simple. One is printed and one is online. Although society engages differently with each medium, and yes, this is a societal change, their drawing power and what they deliver is ultimately the same. If anything has changed, it is the definition of society. The audience of printed newspapers appears more local, while the online appears to have a worldwide audience. This change in audience changes not what society is gaining from news outlets, but who is engaging with the news. It is clear from the comparison of printed newspapers and online news sites that as publishing changes, it does not change society. it changes what society means. As society has evolved with the change in publication, the definition of society has changed from a local audience to a global audience, and we need to embrace it.